Chicago with the lead. Batista with the catch. Oh! LeBron James with no regard for human life. Hand down, man down.
Yeah, I can see how disrespectful he's being right now.
No, I went to Temecula and brought you some dirt.
Yeah, that's a technical.
Mama, there goes that man.
Welcome back to The Bounce on a special Friday night. I am Kevin. With me is my dear friend and tomorrow's rival, Nate B. Nate, how you doing, sir? Happy Friday.
Well, after moving most of the day, I have to have a nice little rehab here, and
Not sponsored.
exactly, not sponsored, but I'm doing okay now.
Fantastic, brother. Well, I'm excited to have you here. We got some chat action already. Welcome, guys. Welcome in the chat. We're so glad you're here. I'm going to give you a brief run of show. It's going to be very brief because we're going to be interactive tonight. So you see here, we've got Bite-Size Vikes checking out NFL programming coming soon. John says the T-Wolves were snubbed. Well, we're going to talk about it. Nate and I are going to be opposite ends of the spectrum here. We're going to build – wow, I haven't sounded like that in 20 years. We're going to build a tier list here of which teams we're most excited to watch, which ones we're going to be passing on, and then we're going to look at the list that the NBA released yesterday, see how we feel about it. Now, our topic for all of you at home, if you have some thoughts on it, now we will save these till the end when we read it and go over it, but we do want to talk about James Harden and the recent update there with him, I believe, calling Daryl Morey a snake, something along those lines. It's not pretty. And I asked the question on Twitter, is James Harden going after yet another, is this his fourth infinity stone of franchises ruined on the way out? So we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on James Harden and the whole Sixers situation? Joel Embiid removed Philadelphia as his location on Twitter, which is news in the offseason, So before we get into any and all of that, let's talk to Nate about these upcoming tiers. So before we dive in, Nate, why don't you tell the folks at home, give them kind of your barometer here. How often do you watch the NBA? Just give yourself sort of give them a background so we can understand the context before we dive into tier land.
Yeah, so if we did a scale 1 to 10, 1 being super casual and watch maybe like a half to 10, die hard like Kevy Kev over here, I'd have to probably go about a 3 or 4. I mean, I'll watch some games and it's a good time to attend in person. But in terms of winter sports, I just don't really care about basketball, I guess, that much. I know
doesn't really care.
Sacrilegious being a Hoosier, but I'll just leave it at that.
Wow, yeah, he is a Hoosier. Now, you see, he's so blunt. I didn't even get a chance to finish typing up our scroll bar down there at the bottom. No, so this is now the reason I think this will be fun is Nate would be what we would call, now, of course, not with any judgment or any ill thought, but we would probably call Nate a casual when it comes to his NBA opinions. That's kind of what we want, right? As he mentioned, I'm the hoop head. I'm the dude who can sit and watch a Wizards Hornets game. I might have to have a pretty slow week that week, but I love the game. I can honestly watch it at some very poor levels and still get some enjoyment out of it. So we'll kind of see how each other feels about each thing, and then we'll hear your thoughts as well. So we do want to hear from you in the comments as we are building these tiers. And let's just go ahead and get it started, Nate. Before we do, please join our Discord if you are interested. The link is right there. I will add it in the comments here shortly. And while we're talking about things you may want to do, I have no choice. I am contractually obligated to pull up the graph and point out that almost 60% of you that watch are not subscribed. I will say we're trending in the right direction. We were over 60 the last time we had one of these graphs, I believe. So we do appreciate those of you who are tuning in, who are subscribing, and especially those of you who are active in our chat week after week, day after day, because don't doubt it, folks, we have streams on a almost nightly basis. We're double dipping tonight, so make sure you stay tuned. After our show, there's going to be it's really a triple header because they're already double header, another damn fantasy podcast and Rumbles of Red. So any thoughts before we go into our basketball talk here? Nate, any thoughts about that fantasy? We'll end the night with our little with our preview for tomorrow. But you got any fantasy football takes? Go check out the comment section.
I'm blanking now. I had a really trolly comment, and now I forgot. So, we'll just say always draft Austin Eckler and Christian McCaffrey, and you'll probably do pretty good.
Hey, Austin Eckler did all right for me last year. So we will be continuing some coverage when the NBA season starts again at playback.tv/bitesize sports. So be sure to check us out there as well. Let's do it. It is tier time. NBA watchability. Let's go. We're going to pop it up here. All right, Nate, we're going to start. Really, let's just start. We can just start with the Bucks. We'll just go with this incredibly oh no, that does say the Brooklyn Nets. Okay, I was about to say, is that a really outdated logo there? But we'll just go with whatever version of order. I don't think this is alphabetical order at all. I don't really understand it, but let's do it. Let's start with the Bucks. The tiers. I tried to have a little fun with these. We've got must-see TV. Excited to watch. Will watch in the playoffs. Might not catch a lot of their other games, but if they make a run, I'd be interested. We'll catch a few games. And then we have pass, which is obviously you're going to pass. And then who is more for you than for me. But that's basically there's not a chance. I would have to pay you money, maybe we'll catch a few games. Maybe for Nate, that would be I've got money on it. I don't know if you would bet on NBA games or not, but
I have in the past, so we're all good there.
Well, fantastic. All right, Milwaukee Bucks. Now, how much do you know about the Bucks? I'm assuming you know about Giannis. Feel free to tag me in with any questions, guys. Just so you know, any team that Nate doesn't know too well, we will cover more in depth when we build my tier. So let us know. Fire away with your comments. But Nate, thoughts on the Bucks? Where are they at on the tier?
I would probably put them in the excited to watch. Will watch in the playoffs. Giannis is Giannis. It's hard not to enjoy watching him play. And I also have always been a big fan, and, big in quotes, because, again, I'm not as hoop head like as some other individuals on our team here. The Lopez brothers, especially Mr. Lopez on the Bucks.
You love Brook Lopez. Yeah, the guy who has lived 2 careers. We've talked about that a lot on this program. We love us some Brook Lopez, and it's just so very interesting how the guy for about the first decade of his career did nothing but work in the paint, get rebounds, maybe block some shots, and then for the second half of his career, he's and it was funny the year when he switched. The very first year of him being a 3-point shooter, I think he averaged about the same amount of points. It was very uncanny. His numbers to the untrained eye didn't look any different, except now he was scoring from beyond the arc instead of inside the paint. And now he's one of the better shooters. And also, I will add the impact he's had on Bobby Portis's game. So Bobby Portis has improved his outside shooting, and he himself attributes a lot of his growth to playing with Brook Lopez. So we'll see. I think you're in the right ballpark with me. There is no right answer here. These are opinions, but I will just tease that we're about on the same page with these guys. Let's see. Ooh, yes, we've got. Oh yeah, so they do have both. Okay, all right. Nate was on with that one, and I like it. The chat is coming alive here. Lee is going to pass on Clippers, Pistons, and T-Wolves. Hopefully it doesn't get too violent in the chat there. So I don't think John's going to like that passing on the T-Wolves. But what about the Brooklyn Nets? Now, this is a young team. They've had Cam Thomas, who had some pretty big games. They've got Mikal Bridges, who they have called Brooklyn Bridges at times. Spencer Dinwiddie, I believe, is still back there. Young team. What are your thoughts, Nate? Would you watch a Brooklyn Nets game?
I mean, at most, maybe catch a few games. Unlike Johnny Boy there with his hot take of being livid, to me, the Nets kind of are just like, they're there. I mean, I got no animosity towards the Nets, but I also, I'd have to double check, but I also don't even think I have any Nets on my fantasy team. So, you know, they're just there. We'll just maybe catch a few games.
Catch a few games of the Brooklyn Nets. Now that takes us to our next team, who if I could, I would pass 90% of the time. That's not because they're not worth watching, but that's just an old rivalry that refuses to die, thanks in part to one Mr. Wally Zerbiak and his ridiculous all-star opinions. But that's the New York Knicks, who, I mean, if I could watch them lose to the Pacers, I'd put them on must-see TV at the very top of my tier. But we've got Randall there. We've got Brunson there. We've got the re-signed and unfortunately stood up for a date, Josh Hart. What do you think about the Knicks, Nate? Would you be interested in watching this team?
Playoff basketball. That's where I would personally stick them at. I mean, they had some interesting matchups last year, and they took care of business against the Cavs, right? I'm not thinking incorrectly, right?
You are correct.
Yeah. So, you know, they have a strong sensibility about them. And what I mean by that is, you know, they play pretty decently good defense. Randall, you know, coming out of college, I feel like Randall was super hyped, and for a couple of years, in my very casual observations, I feel like he had some struggles in his play, and you know, he didn't really grow into his own until recently, is what I'm getting at. And now he's doing what he needs to do there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's interesting. One of the other recurring topics here on the Bounce is that baby Lakers team. When we think about look at them now. So we already mentioned Josh Hart. I don't know exactly the overlap but he was a part of that core at one point. You had Randall, you had Brandon Ingram, Jordan Clarkson, Kyle Kuzma. And yeah, it was one of those things where almost all of those players, with the exception of Kuzma, he did see some of his growth in LA. Virtually all of them, Lonzo Ball being the other, hard to keep him in mind with his unfortunate recent injury history.
Right.
But those were all guys that it didn't work when they were all together and they were all young. But once they all went somewhere and had a chance to figure it out, a lot of those guys would become very valuable contributors, if not the best player on their team at times. So I will be interested to watch that. I do think this Knicks team is going to be dangerous. It's well recorded my thoughts on Tom Thibodeau and my beliefs that the way that he manages his rotation, the way that he coaches his team will inevitably keep him from winning a big one. But that's not today's conversation. So if you think I'm out of line, I'd love to hear about it in a comment. We will read those as we go. Toronto.
Brief
go ahead.
Comment about the Knicks here real quick. Tom Thibodeau, for whatever reason, reminds me of Scott Skiles. I don't know why. I really don't know why. That's just every time I see him, all I can see is Scott Skiles.
Well, and I will say, trigger warning for my fellow bald brethren, but as a bald guy, I can say this. I can definitely think of at least one thing that might make you think, oh, is that Scott Skiles? But no, I don't know if Scott Skiles had the same reputation for running players into the ground. And, he may have had a similar reputation for inexplicably keeping useful players in the doghouse for too long and not playing guys who should be able to contribute and sticking to, he probably did that, but those 8-man rotations that Tibbs loves so much just kills me. It makes no sense. It's the equivalent of, to me, having an NFL coach that only keeps one kicker. Cause it's like, well, why he should be able to kick and punt. Goddamn. Like, what do I need 2 of them for? It's like, no, you got the roster spots, use them.
Or another apt analogy would be thinking about a high school football team in a real small town where they've got like 30 to 40 players, but like 8 people play both ways. So it's just like you're not using any depth for whatever reason.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one's good too, because it's kind of the way, Tom Thibodeau kind of coaches his team like it's an AAU team, got to make sure that the coach's kid plays. Not that he has a coach's kid, essentially, but yeah, he's got his 6 or 7 guys that are going to play, and everybody else better just look forward to one of the many injuries that will also be on his roster because everybody's constantly running ragged. So, Toronto, there's a theme today. The theme is stuff we've talked about before. And the Toronto Raptors are a team that we believe should have blown it up last year at the trade deadline. And now we are still here, still talking about them possibly blowing it up. But that's not what the talk is today. The talk is, Nate, will you be watching Canadian basketball this season?
As it currently stands, I would throw them in the maybe catch a few games category. However, if OG Anunoby got traded or whatever, that would drop them down to pass. Because at least I know, a few people on that team. Yeah. But their tier is all based on OG Anunoby.
Which is fair. That's fair. You got your hometown boys that you like to root for. So this next one, I'm interested to get your take on the Utah Jazz. Will you be watching the Utah Jazz? Which, mind you, folks, just keep in mind there is some great jazz in Utah. We've talked about this before. Talk about a team that shouldn't have been able to keep its name. The Utah Jazz. Get the Jazz out of here, man.
And at least I will say, like, they kind of, although the mountain jerseys of the 90s are pretty iconic, at least they kept, went back to like kind of the former colors a little bit. I mean, not really, but, they're kind of treading back to Mardi Gras sort of style. I mean, I don't think they'll ever fully go back there, but they're trying to go down that route.
The first thing you think of when you think of Utah is Mardi Gras, so it makes sense. No, it's I feel about this probably about the same way that I think we were on the same page with this one about the Oilers thing. Where it's just like I don't know, it's weird now that the Houston team is back. Like now that the Pelicans, at least they are, like you said, they're doing the Mardi Gras thing. But we've seen the Jazz kind of go back and do the retro stuff too, where it's kind of odd to me. I would be one that would root for a Utah. Honestly, I'd root for the brand, not only a rebrand. If I won't be upset if the Jazz ever have to move from Utah, and then God forbid they don't move them to a third city and still call them the Jazz, because no one even really listens to Jazz anymore. So, will you be watching the most poorly named team in the NBA?
As of now, I'm going to put them in the pass category. I know they got some good young pieces, but in my finite amount of time, I think there are other teams that I would just prefer to watch.
That's fair. Would one of those teams be the Houston Rockets? Now, I will let you know, neither Tracy McGrady, nor Yao Ming, nor Steve Francis, nor Akeem Olajuwon, nor Clyde Drexler, no Mario Ellie, nor Robert Ory. None of those guys are there. So there are some good young players, though, in Houston, but I don't really expect you personally. I mean, maybe just let me know. Don't let me paint you in a corner. What do you know about the Rockets? Will you be watching?
I'll throw them in the maybe catch a few games category here because they've got some interesting pieces. So, it'll be interesting to see with the addition of Fred VanVleet how they're going to all mesh together, and continue to improve. So, the Rockets are potentially a very dark horse playoff team. And when I say that, I say the 8th seed. Nothing higher than that.
Okay. Well, I like that. That might file under a hot take in these parts. So what about the New Orleans Pelicans? Now, did you see Zion had some photos posted of him? I believe it was earlier today. It might have been yesterday. My man is in shape. I think he is highly motivated by all of the drama that he has dealt with online. Might also be motivated by the incoming mouth to feed. But whatever the reason, he's looking like he's in shape. Hopefully he'll be ready to go to start the season. But Brandon Ingram, who we've also mentioned already, and then, of course, one of my personal favorites, CJ McCollum. What do you think about the Pelicans, Nate?
As a casual pass, and it's not just because, they're bad or anything, or they don't have intriguing pieces, but I've never really liked Zion personally. And I just have no interest in seeing the Pelicans putt to like the 6th seed in the West.
Hey, we will have very different takes on this one, but I will save it for my tier. But I can absolutely understand that take, and you may not be wrong because this team has a hard time staying healthy, which is a perfect segue to our next team, the Los Angeles Lakers. You want to talk about a team that's name technically does not make sense? The Minneapolis, now Los Angeles Lakers, who still have LeBron, still have AD, brought back a lot of players. What are your thoughts here? This is a championship or bust franchise, one of the biggest names in the NBA, Nate, but does that matter to you? Will you be watching?
It doesn't matter to me, but I would personally still throw them in the excited to watch category just because this might seem like a swan song sort of situation for LeBron. I mean, he seems pretty fired up, and who knows with the unfortunate events of a few weeks ago with his son, how that's going to play a part there. On the court, he's a consummate professional, so I'm really interested to see. Like I said, I think this could be a swan song moment, and sometimes those work out.
I like it. I also like this comment before we look at our next one. Lee says, Utah should be called lost because they need ownership help and no longer competent. So I love that. I love a good dig at the Jazz. And we also, Lee's been putting his tiers there in the comment. We encourage the rest of you to leave your tiers in the comments as well. And what I'll do as we switch gears from Nate's to mine, we'll read some of these in the comments. In the meantime, I'll just flash them on screen. Nate, Chicago Bulls. What are we doing here? Would you watch the Bulls? Would this have been your favorite team if you were a basketball fan?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the 90s. I like the Bears. I like I'm a big fan of the Cubs and the Bears. So, I mean, for NBA basketball, it would make sense because where I grew up is it's not much, but it's a little bit closer than Indianapolis where the Pacers are. So, that's, I remember watching some of the 97-98 finals games against the Jazz. So that would be my team. But as of now, I'm going to put him in pass. I would rather try to watch my Cats play basketball and fail 100% of the time than the corpse of whatever this team is. Although we'll see if I end up keeping Patrick Williams as one of my keepers. But aside from that, I mean, where's the direction? There is no fucking direction. You know, like Lonzo may never play a professional basketball game ever again. I mean, you've got Levine and DeMar, but what about the rest of the team? I mean, like, I think they should have tried to get something for Vuk, personally.
Yep, agreed.
I don't know if they would have, but yeah, I'll say it again. I'd rather watch my Cats play basketball than the Bulls.
Yeah, sometimes that offense is like watching a couple of cats try to swat a ball of yarn across the wood floor. But yeah, I agree. That's another team where it's, what were you guys doing? We really thought they should have been sellers at the trade deadline. They weren't feeling it. They weren't into it. They decided to basically do nothing and hope that, you know, there were a couple of teams, the Bulls and the Raptors being the first two that come to mind, that they took Brooklyn selling at the market as being a reason enough for them to just be able to stay put. Like, oh, this is going to have us bump up enough that we'll be able to kind of go into the playoffs, which was terrible. Then they ended up in no man's land. Now, what about this Minnesota team? They are a young, talented team. Of course, we've got some folks in the comments that like this team. I love Anthony Edwards. Never been shy about that one. One of my favorite young players in the league. He reminds me of the young version of Michael Jordan. So the one that was, you know, more aggressive, that really attacked the rim with a viciousness and didn't have quite the same polish on the outside or with the jump shot as Michael would go on to have a little bit later in life. But then there's that weird clogging in the front court. Nate, what do you think? Are you interested in watching this team try to figure it out, or are you going to pass?
Before I briefly, I just wanted to briefly touch on something with the Bulls, just because it reminded me. Did you see that thing where I forget who it was, came out and said if the Bulls had gotten rid of Luol Deng in 2010, they could have signed Wade, Bosch, and LeBron?
I did see that. So I don't use this meme as much in this show. I use it in other shows. But there's a phrase that I like, and I think you may or may not have played this game before, but forgive me if you don't get the reference here. But in these situations, I press X to doubt, Nate. For LA Noir fans know what I'm talking about. I don't believe that, and I just think it's a fun article to write and to get clicks. Did you look into it a little more closely at all? I mean, because it's one of those, hypothetically, if they had moved off from one of the worst contracts in NBA history, then they could have done this. But who's going to accept Luol Deng's albatross of a contract as a favor to the Bulls so that they can go sign LeBron, Wade, and Bosch? I also think, weren't there trades involved in getting those guys there? I can't remember.
There might have been. I don't remember offhand. I just thought it was interesting. And the last thing I'll say on that is, as much anguish and vitriol that LeBron got with going to Miami, imagine if he had ended up going to Chicago in reality.
I wonder. Do you think it would have been worse?
I think it would have been. It would have been, in my honest opinion, it would have been 10 times worse.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think Miami made him a nice big villain, maybe because it was Michael's. I also think because it was Michael's city that it was never really in doubt. I mean, yes, Dwayne Wade was from Chicago, wanted to go back there. I don't think LeBron would have went. Lee says Edwards is strictly mid-range shooter, Kev, good but not exciting. You know, I would say on the outside, on the perimeter game, I would agree with that. I do get excited about his penetrating ability and some of the stuff he does when he drives. But yeah, you know, doesn't have that outside range yet. So we'll see if he's able to add it. You know, he has the self-proclaimed best shooting big man in the league next to him. So is that enough? Nate, is all of that paired with the occasional antics of Rudy Gobert? Is that enough to get you to tune in to Minnesota Timberwolves?
I throw it in the maybe catch a few games categories, but the thing with it is, they've got a two towers problem. I almost said twin towers problem, and I'm sure people would be a little upset about that, but it harkens back to the days of, I want to say, it was Virginia with I forget the other guy, but with Ralph Sampson and the other guy, and they had like two really good big men. But this is like a little rougher situation. Again, I'm not like real educated by any stretch, but how often does Gobert and Cat even play together, really?
Well, it didn't happen a lot last year due to injury, which was part of the issue, that they played a small amount early on together. Then there was an injury to Cat, and so by the time he came back before the playoffs, they didn't really have a lot of time on the floor together. So there wasn't a lot of time to get it figured out, and early on in the season, it was evident that it wasn't working. But historically, it's worked at times. You mentioned Ralph Sampson. They, for a short time, Houston had him and Hakeem Olajuwon at the same time. Of course, the Spurs were able to do it with Robinson and Duncan, but that was more of a
a way different situation in my opinion.
I agree, because Robinson was on his way out, and what was that? It was really if it wasn't his last full season, like that was his last meaningful season in the NBA. So yeah, you haven't seen it work very often is all that I will say. One of the what ifs that we'll never know, unfortunately, where it looked like it was working was Anthony Davis and Boogie Cousins. That really looked like that was working. An ACL injury, in really unfortunate. Like, Boogie was a victim of being a hustle player, because basically chasing down what was ultimately a meaningless ball going out of bounds with just a few minutes left before the All-Star break, and he hurts himself, and we all know the rest. But that team was on a roll going into that. People were having a hard time stopping them, but those were two dynamic big men that had ball handling ability, and at least Cousins at that time had outside range already at that point in his career. Anthony Davis hadn't quite added it yet, but maybe. But neither of these guys impressed me athletically the way Davis and Cousins did back then. So I don't know that it will work. Sorry, John. But I'm excited to watch this team. He's as if on cue. We've got John on the stage. So, John, shoot me a message. I will bring you on whenever you're ready. Just send me a message in the private chat. In the meantime, Nate, Portland. Oh, wait. Well, let me see. John, are you ready? Because we don't. Maybe we won't move off of Portland here, or we won't move off of Minnesota. There we go. John, welcome, sir.
Gentlemen, how are we doing?
I'm good. I'm a little scared right now. I'm worried about what we said about the T-Wolves that had you hop on so quick.
I said, well, let me see if I can find this thing here quick.
The fact that he shows up in like a collared shirt with a button undone, and then he just took a long puff off of a stogie. Well, not a stogie, off of a dart there. I don't know why that was funny to me.
Hey, it's a Friday night stream, man. It's casual. We're laid back. I've got a little something in this cup.
Yeah, I couldn't wait till the end of the heater. I just had to jump in the studio.
So, what, you got some thoughts on Minnesota here before we move on? We know, obviously, it's full disclosure, guys. John's a fan, so keep that bias in mind.
A little partial. But yeah, man, just like on the Cat Gobert stuff, I don't know if you can see my tag there. Pomposity killed the cat. I believe that. I think we're cooked. I think it's just I think the sooner they pivot and just build around Ant with whatever they can do, the better. And like contractually right now too, it's pretty rough with the huge Max Gobert's on, huge Max Pat's on, and the one coming to Anthony Edwards. It's just I don't blame any out of staters for not tuning into this team, or at least not being bought in enough preseason to like want to tune into this team. I might have them in one of the middle tiers there, frankly, for me, because I'm a basketball guy. I like watching the rest of the NBA, and it's being a fan almost steers me away more, if that makes sense. It's a frustrating
I can relate to that. That's how the Pacers were for me last year. I was very excited for the future of that team, but they weren't winning a lot of games, and usually they were competitive for about 3 quarters. So it was like, yeah, I love this team. I love watching the highlights, but I really, on my tiers last year, they probably would have been like we'll watch in the playoffs kind of thing. Like I'm watching you more than I should because you're my team, but it's not must-see TV by any means. Now, I don't feel about that way about them this year. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, sneaky addition is Shake Milton. I think he could make a little bit of noise. There were a couple games he had when the Sixers had a lot of injuries. I think he had a 38 ball one time, and it might have been like the Karis LeVert 50 ball, and maybe that's just we got our hopes up a little bit. But I think he can make some noise off the bench, kind of bring back what Malik Beasley provided before he got overpaid.
Yeah, nice. That I do like that addition as well. I think Shake Milton's a solid player. So could maybe step up into a slightly bigger role. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. It's not great though. It's not great. Go Vikes.
Yeah, we always got that. Yeah, which while we're on the topic, quick little break here. All 3 of us, I believe, are going to be hosting our own team-specific podcasts in Bite Size Sports on our NFL network. So we got Colts, Bears, and Vikings. Now, at some point, listen, if you're a Detroit Lions fan, please reach out to me. Please call me, because we only need one. You're all we're missing for our NFC North gauntlet, and you will be the first complete division in the Bite Size Sports
we don't necessarily need any Lions fans. I don't know.
They're going to be the hardest to find, so we got to we got to yell for them early and often.
Yes, definitely.
Well, I mean, we need to have someone to cover a playoff team. I mean, we've got we've got the first place team covered, the third place team covered, and the fourth place team covered. The second place team there.
He is lucky.
You brought me back.
He's lucky that at Michael Allen NFL is not here right now. You're lucky Michael's out here coaching the youth on how to be better football players. Otherwise, he'd be in here with some words about that. I'm still rooting for my boy. I hope he hasn't been cut yet, Alex McGough. I was really excited when the Packers brought him in as their third quarterback, and then preseason game 1, they're like, yeah, no, Sean Clifford can just drop back 30 times. That's fine. Yeah, we just need more Sean Clifford reps. That's what we need. Yeah, well, you can't win them all, I guess.
We're feeling the same way about the high Nick Mullins snap count in the preseason.
No disrespect to Mr. Mullins, but I'd feel that way about really any Nick Mullins snap count. I'd be like, hang on.
We drafted somebody, right? Can we just...
Yeah, there are guys at the USFL. Like, it's like, why don't you guys sign Alex McGough if Nick Mullins is out here getting snaps? Like, the XFL MVP, I think, just got signed too. I mean, give these guys a shot. All right, well, we can jump back into our tier here. I want to make sure, just to remind all of you, we've got a double dip of fantasy football coming up here in just about 30 minutes. So hang with us. We're going to take you right up into the next show, and you can grab some popcorn, take a quick break, and don't go anywhere. You just might have to refresh your YouTube tab. So here we go. Portland
So-
Trailblazers. Oh, Nate, what you got?
I'm gonna jump Portland here, and
Oh.
because I haven't been super exciting. You know, I haven't done any must see TV, and I had some in the back of my head here. I would like to add the Nuggets, the Spurs, and the Pacers to must see TV.
Ooh, let's go. Okay, yeah, a big one. Nuggets, Spurs, and Pacers. Anything you want to add? Any context as to why those are
Oh,
your
yeah.
first three popping
And-
off?
And add the Suns, because the Suns are going to be must see TV, but for a different reason. So for the
Wow.
Nuggets, you know, the Nuggets have a really strong core, as we obviously saw, like a really, really good core. And I know that they lost, you know, some pieces, but their two big pieces are still there, and they're still going to perform, you know, bearing injury. And I always like to enjoy watching Jokic's game. In terms of the Spurs, you know, I've got a little bit of a rooting interest here, obviously, with Branham and Sochan. But I think
Yeah.
they've got a ton of young pieces. They've got the right coach to make them gel. I think they're going to be pretty exciting this year. And in terms of the Pacers, you know, they're not to the same level, but you know, they've got some good young pieces too, and it's interesting to see further steps that Halliburton is going to take. And
Yeah.
It's also a little biased just being, you know, living pretty close to Gainbridge. You know, now that I live closer, I'm not going to have many excuses not to go to a few more games. And then the Phoenix Suns are must-watch TV for me, because I think this is absolutely going to blow up in their face completely. I think somebody is either going to get hurt, or somebody's going to pout for the entire year. I guess pouting is a harsh term to use, but you're not going to gel. And I think it's going to be up in flames like the New York Mets. You spend all this money, you have a huge payroll, but you don't get any results.
Ooh, okay. I love that take. I don't know. Wow, I like that. But John, what are your thoughts? We just added 4 to Nate's must-see TV. Pick at will. Any of these you disagree with? Any that you agree for any particular reason? All right, I think we lost him for a second. He's either very, very deep in concentration. We might have lost him for a second, but oh, there we go. I think we got him back. We're back. Obviously we got Wemby in there. We got the defending champs. We got my favorite team. So some of that might have just been lip service. And then we've got the Phoenix Suns, who, well, you just heard what Nate said, and I want to give you a chance to react to it before I do. So any thoughts there, John?
Well, I like I like the Pacers being there, honestly. I mean, I could see them just being in that excited to watch, certainly. But I think if you really like basketball in its purest form, jump shooting form aside, you got to love watching Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, just the way he moves the ball, the way he runs that offense. I mean, he was 63rd in usage last year, but still finished first in assists per game, maybe second. But I mean, just the rate at which he sets up his teammates is pretty unbelievable. On the fast break, in the half court, he's awesome. And I like I like the ancillary pieces with the Pacers as well. I've always been a huge Miles Turner guy. Kev, do you think he's getting traded soon, or? I'm just kidding, but
Miles Turner. Yeah, I've seen 25 articles this week about Miles Turner being the perfect trade piece. And people drive me nuts. Not anymore. They've slowed down a little bit, but geez, man.
Yeah, it was rough for a while. But the Suns, yeah, you know, Nate, I'd love to see it blow up in their face too. I don't know that I've ever seen that level of redundancy in skill set at the top of a roster like that.
Yes.
But you know, either way, it'll be really interesting to see how that works or doesn't. just because it's a pretty unprecedented collection of players. Like, I mean, this isn't the Celtics big three. This isn't the Heat big three even. I mean, these are all perimeter ball handling players who create their own offense predominantly. So it's going to be really interesting to watch. I mean, we interested to see how they stagger those lineups, how often all three of those guys are on the floor, whether DeAndre Ayton is there for the long haul.
Yeah.
That's going to be an interesting one. Of course, the Nuggets, of course, the Spurs. I'm with you on those for sure. If I was doing this on my own, I might have the Pacers a tier below. But I'm right there with you guys. I am excited to watch that team for sure. And just, I mean, looking at the rest, I don't know that there are any other no-brainer must-watch TV teams outside of maybe the Heat, especially if Lillard ends up there, just because that'll be really interesting to see how they kind of maintain that culture if they do bring in some more star-level talent and move off of some of these guys who have really helped to kind of, fill out the roster and maintain that culture, like a Gabe Vincent who's already out on his way out, like a Duncan Robinson who might be part of a trade package.
Right.
I'm really curious about how that team ends up looking. So, but looking at the rest of them, I don't think there's any other no-brainers for must see.
I don't know. In my opinion,
Nate, what about you?
The Magic, I got to be at must-see TV here. That one's a joke. Because it's weird. So most of the Pacers games I've been to in my life, it just so happens they mostly are against the Magic. For whatever reason.
It just so happens that Nate goes to the cheapest games. Hey, I get it. I like it. Hey, it just so happens that I went to a Pacers-Pistons game at the end of the year last year. You know why? Because they were $17 seats. That's why. It might as well have been the Mad Ants against whoever the Pistons G League team is. But, yeah, go ahead, Nate.
I was going to say before they made a deal with StubHub to put in like a floor, this was like 2012, 2013. You could get Pacers tickets for like 25 cents on StubHub.
Well, there were some years 25 cents wouldn't have been worth it to go see them. But anyway, Nate, let's hit this one. Let's kind of hit a rapid fire round here because we promised the folks two for a barometer. So let's get through this one, and then it should only take me about 5 minutes to whip mine together, and then we can get the folks out of here with plenty of time for another damn fantasy podcast. Don't run away. We still got 20 minutes, folks, but we're gonna put a little pep in our step here. What do we got, Nate?
So for the Trailblazers, I'm gonna stick them in pass, irregardless if Dame is there or not.
That's not a word.
I'm pro player, but I'm just sick of hearing about all this. Thunder, throw it in the catch a few games because that's another. Actually, we'll watch in the playoffs because that's that would be
Smart.
A potentially exciting team right there. They got a lot of good young pieces.
Smart. I like it. What about Memphis?
I'm going to throw them in. We'll watch in the playoffs. I hitched my fantasy wagon to Ja Morant, so for better or worse, I'm going down with the ship.
I like this. All right. Dallas, we've got Kyrie and Luka. Does that move the needle for you, or are you just going to catch these guys occasionally?
We'll catch a few games just because I don't feel like they're a very good defensive team, and I'm just talking about perception personally.
Perfect. Hell, if we keep this pace, we might get to build a tier for John here too. So what about the Clippers? You interested in seeing if a pass. All right. Nice. We will see. Golden State Warriors.
Catch a few games. I mean, they're still interesting even if they're getting older. I'll be real intrigued to see how that goes. Detroit. Who?
There we go. We finally got one. I was like, come on, are we not gonna offend any fan base here? I went through the effort of creating this rude tier at the bottom, and we've yet to I was at the very least, I was putting Charlotte in there, whether you said it or not. I was putting somebody in there. But no, I like that with Detroit. What about Sacramento, a team that went from 6 national games to 22 if you add the NBA TV?
Excited to watch. I think, they'll continue to gel and improve. And, even with some tough competition in the West, I think they'll be right up there.
I like it. What about Cleveland? They've got tough competition, but they're a playoff team in the East.
We'll watch in the playoffs.
Watch in the playoffs.
They got some interesting players, but I'm not really going to go out of my way to watch them.
Okay. I like that. What about the Celtics?
This is going to be an interesting one, but pass.
Oh. Can you elaborate on that at all?
As a casual fan, I have no interest in watching the duo of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum.
Wow. John, any thoughts on that before I move?
The addition of the Porzingis is a little interesting.
A little unicorn action, huh?
Yeah. We finally got a little bit of a shakeup with that roster, with the core anyway. So that'll be a little interesting to see. But I mean, I could see it becoming something of a pass-worthy team later in the season. And it might just be a little bit of like viewers fatigue. I mean, they're always there late in the season. Always towards the top of the East, really since Jason Tatum got there, essentially. I mean, even back to the IT years and the Kyrie experiment, they've been close for what is it, Kev? 5 conference finals in the last.
Like the Buffalo Bills at this point. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So
my thing with that is though, like putting aside voter fatigue, like you can still have like those teams at the top, but for me, there can still be some really, really interesting pieces and some storylines going on. I mean, the Lakers of the 2000s is a perfect example. For better or worse, like you had so many different storylines, a lot of success, a lot of, big personalities. So even with them being up there, I don't feel like they were a team that I'd want to pass on. And I mean, the 90 Bulls, that's another example there too, although Kevin might disagree just a little bit there. But, I just don't get the same type of feeling with the Celtics. This rendition of the Celtics, let me clarify.
Well, that's fair. What about the 76ers? They're kind of a mess right now. Are you going to be watching this?
Pass. I don't.
Passing on the train wreck.
I mean, I'm just real tired of Harden doing the same thing over and over again. And, I mean, Embiid can be funny, but I also think he's kind of overrated at the same time.
That could be a whole episode, but you're not alone in that thought. That's what I'll say. What about the Charlotte, no longer owned by Michael Jordan Hornets?
Who?
Yeah, buddy.
I mean, obviously, I know some of the players on there, but in what right do the Charlotte Hornets have that will make a casual fan actually want to watch them?
Here's what I will tell you, because my brother, before he moved to Michigan and thus became a Pistons fan, he kind of had a serendipitous situation where he moved to Michigan the same year that they drafted Jaden Ivey. So he's like, oh, you know what? Pistons. But he was because he grew up, I don't know if this is a generational thing or what, but he grew up, his favorite team has migrated with his favorite player. So he grew up a Cavs fan because of Kyrie Irving. As you might imagine, kind of got tired of having Kyrie be his favorite player, moved on to LaMelo Ball. And so poor guy had to watch like 2 years of Hornets basketball. And what he has said is that the announced team, the Charlotte Hornets play-by-play and color commentary for whatever their local network is, he swears they are the best in the business. They get so hyped. They get so excited. You got that going for you. So if you do accidentally stumble across a Hornets game on NBA League Pass, make sure you watch the Hornets broadcast because it'll be entertaining. But what about these last four? So we've got Kuzma and the Wizards, Orlando, we've got Miami and Atlanta. Nate, where do you put these last four?
In order of those four,
Okay.
2 will catch 1 game. Excited to watch. Because, and that doesn't change whether or not that they get Dame. And then for the Hawks, we'll catch a few games only to see how DeJounte Murray is doing, really. For fantasy purpose.
Okay, well, there that is. Breathe it in all its glory, because I'm going to take it away here in a second. And what we're going to do is I'm going to save this. We're going to put all these on Twitter and let you guys tell us after the show. Hit us up. Let us know who you agree with, who you're vibing with. So I'm going to remove this for a second, and then we're going to get it set up for John. We've got about 12 minutes. So John, we'll if you want to do one, we'll go ahead. We'll do a speed run for you, and then if we have time, we'll do a speed run for me as well.
Yeah, I can fly.
Let's see here. I'm just gonna take a second. Let's see. Nate's watch list. Boom. Let's see. Download the image. Let's go. Now I need to refresh it. Why am I narrating this? Okay. Might as well put it up on the screen if I'm just gonna say everything I'm doing out loud. Okay, so why can't I want to refresh this. Come on, guys. Do you guys know how to do this quickly? Actually, here John, we'll just go with let's just move the people into their rightful places, right? So let's start must-see TV. Who do you want to move out? Who do you want to move in? Yeah, we can just move them around.
Yeah, so I'd move the Pacers just down 1.
I think you said Pacers here, right?
Yeah, I talked about them a little bit. I like Tyrese a lot, but I'll move the Wolves up to watch them in the playoffs. They'll be there. According to Bruce Brown, formerly of the Denver, another reason to watch the Pacers, by the way. The Wolves were their toughest series. So take that
if you didn't see that soundbite, yeah, go back and watch that if you missed that. That was a great soundbite.
Put that in your.
He had a lot more to things to say.
Okay. Let's see. I'm pretty in line with Nate for the most part, honestly.
All right. I
mean, looking for other ones. I might move the Jazz up to catch a few games, so I can continue to be pissed about trading Walker Kessler.
Oh, you had Rudy Gobert at home, and you didn't even know.
We had like 5 blocks a game in college or whatever.
You didn't even need to go out for him.
Yeah, I will not be catching any Nets games. I'll pass. Let's see. I'll watch the Mavericks in the playoffs with the caveat of if they make it. Because if they do, it could be a tough team to stop 7 games in a row. But they'll have to stop another team for 7 games, so that could be interesting. And I'd move the Heat up 1 as well, actually. I'm probably watching the Heat regardless, whether Dame goes there or not. I'm gonna be interested to see how they look. I love the playoff run. Obviously, was incredible. But I just love the way they play, and I'm curious to see if they'll play the same way once a guy like Dame gets there. A mild-mannered guy like that, you could see him just buying right in. But he's not that type of player. You know, he's an offensive engine, but
all right. Well, let's see. I think John had to pop out there for a second. So we may be locking him in here at this tier. We'll give it a second. What do you think, Nate? While I get ready for my list and we give John a minute here, what are your thoughts on this? You like these adjustments that he made?
I don't necessarily have a problem with them. I can't say I necessarily will agree 100%, but that's what the beauty of classy and respectful opinions are. So the list is fine by me.
I like it. Yeah, it's looking like on my end, the stream is going to end at just about the perfect time because my internet is giving me a real hard time. So let's run through this. Let's see. I got to shake some things up here. Surprisingly enough, I actually will keep the Pacers right at excited to watch, even though I'm a fan. I'll hesitate to call them must-see TV as of now. So let me see. We're going to move a couple of these teams up. I will watch the Celtics in the playoffs. I'm really not excited to watch them. I'm excited to watch the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm going to move the Spurs down, although I really love Victor. I think this is a good young team. I think they're must-watch television next year. I think this year they're going to be on highlight watch, and they very, very well they could sneak into the playoffs. Don't get me wrong. So there is that. I am going to. Oh man, these are tough. So I like Nuggets, Suns. I'm going to actually move the Bucks up to must-see TV for me. This is a personal taste kind of thing. I love team basketball, and Milwaukee outside of Denver might do some of the best team basketball, have one of the deepest rosters in the NBA. So that's the kind of stuff that I like. Lakers, I'm really having a hard time on putting them as must-see TV. They always have the big storylines, but they're not, I'm just going to keep them at excited to watch. I'm also really torn on Miami. I think I might put Miami on excited to watch. Now, here's where I got to move the Pelicans up to will watch. Honestly, no, I'm excited to watch the Pelicans. If they can stay healthy, I love Brandon Ingram. I think Zion Williamson, if he can ever get a full season in him, will be great. Sixers are a dumpster fire, so I'm going to put them in. We'll watch a few games. Rockets will watch a few games. Put Toronto in as pass for me. Jazz, I will watch in the playoffs. Memphis, Knicks, I like this here. Cleveland, we'll watch in the playoffs. Same thing with Dallas, Minnesota. All that stuff's good. I'm lightly excited about the Rockets. Warriors, we'll watch in the playoffs, but I'm secretly awaiting their demise. Clippers going to catch a few games. But yeah, Portland is a tough one. I'm going to put Portland in. We'll catch a few games because I really like Shaedon Sharpe. And so they have some young talent there now where even if Dame Lillard is gone, I think they will still be worth watching a little bit. And the last one that I'm going to move up, which we'll move up to, will catch a few games. The Detroit Pistons. I am cautiously optimistic about this team's future. They have Jaden Ivey, they have Cade Cunningham, they have Bogdanovich, they have the Thompson twin, Asor, I believe. So they have a ton of young talent there. If they can stay healthy, Detroit is a team, it's a big if, as you were going to say. They have a lot of talent, though, and could be a very exciting team to watch here in a couple of years. So there you have it. There's my list. We will get that one downloaded for you as well. We'll get all three of these posted on our Twitter, probably our Instagram and our Facebook as well. I may even work it into a YouTube short for those of you who like to consume that. So there it is. That will about do it. We're at 9:11. Nate, we've got maybe 2 minutes here. We will say goodbye to the folks. We didn't really get to talk much about James Harden, so let me run through those comments. I am actually we're going to have an episode of Late Night Bites coming up here. It may even be a little bonus stream later tonight, but so we'll talk about this James Harden stuff in more detail later.
Right.
But John had a thought here. James Harden performs on a spectrum that correlates directly with his BMI. You know, he may not be lying there. No coaching. Yeah, that's a good. He could be talking about Detroit on that one. He could also be talking about Philly sometimes. But anyway, thank you guys all so much for watching. Listen, don't go anywhere because we have a double-decker fantasy football episode coming up. But before we bid you farewell, Nate, thanks for coming by. Do you have any farewell for the folks? Anywhere you want them to find you on the internet?
Go Bears.
Go Bears. Keep it simple. You will see Nate and I aplenty on all of our social medias tomorrow as we are covering the Bears-Colts preseason game. Going to be doing, I'm not exactly sure what leading up to the game, but the best way for you to be a part of all the fun would be to go right now and follow us on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. And once again, let's show it one last time. Look at the graph. Not subscribed versus subscribed. We appreciate all of you viewers no matter what, but we would sure like it if you could give us that subscribe click. Go ahead and like it. Tell your friends, all that good stuff. It really, really helps us out. We are gearing up for a monumental run here in the NFL, which Trevor and Dan can tell you all more about here in about 2 minutes. So find me on Twitter at @KevNevick_. All of our socials are scrolling beneath the screen there at @bite_size sports. Find us everywhere. More shows, live shows all week long. Thank you so much. We love you. Take care. Good night.